In a locked facility, a man pours his heart out to his ex-wife, swearing they'll get it back. She isn't in the room. He calls it true love. His name is Pat Solitano, and the speech is rehearsal. 8 months in a court-ordered mental health facility, and the only audience for his grand reconciliation is the inside of his own skull. He's got a plan, a mantra, and a wife named Nikki who has a restraining order and zero idea any of this is happening. Then his mother shows up. Dolores signs him out early against the doctor's recommendation because 8 months is already long enough and she misses her son. And the second she does, Pat tries to smuggle out a passenger. His facility friend Danny needs a ride to North Philly. Pat insists, and Danny immediately goes to work on Dolores like a man selling a timeshare. He calls her the mighty oak that holds the whole household together. He praises her game day lasagna, the kind she makes when the birds play. He is laying it on so thick you could spread it on toast. Dolores is glowing, it's working. It is not working because Danny is not actually allowed to leave the building, and Pat knew that the whole time, and an orderly catches the three of them halfway to the parking lot. Dolores' face crumples. You lied to me, Pat. Danny's not allowed to leave. And just like that, the great escape is over before it started. Danny gets walked back inside still mid-compliment, and Pat's mother gets her first reminder of the day that loving this man means being lied to with a smile. So inside the first 5 minutes of the movie, we've already learned the 3 things you need to know about Pat. He's impulsive, he'll happily bend reality to get what he wants, and somewhere in this family, football is already load-bearing. On the drive home, Pat lays out his entire philosophy unprompted. He's remaking himself. New body, new attitude, a guy worth taking back. He demands they stop at the library so he can read every book on Nikki's high school English syllabus, because Nikki teaches English, and Pat has decided the fastest route to a woman's heart is finishing her homework. He's not reading these books because he likes them. He's reading them so that when he and Nikki are reunited, he'll have informed opinions about the curriculum, which is the kind of romantic gesture that makes perfect sense to exactly one person on Earth. Dolores just drives. Home is a row house in Philadelphia that runs on the Eagles the way other houses run on electricity. Inside, Pat SR and his buddy Randy are mid-argument about the Birds versus the Cowboys, and Pat SR is doing a full forensic breakdown of Deshaun Jackson spiking the ball at the 1-yard line. Get into the end zone, dummy. He's got opinions about Benjamin Franklin being the most American thing that ever happened. He's got the TV remotes arranged in a specific sacred order that no human is allowed to disturb. This is a man with a system, and the system is the most important thing in his life, narrowly edging out his children. Then Pat learns why his dad is home all day. Pat SR lost his job and he's making ends meet as a bookie, taking sports bets, building toward a dream of opening his own cheesesteak restaurant. Dolores blurts this out, Pat repeats it loudly, and Pat SR gets defensive about the cash he keeps around the house. There's a lot of money in there, so show some respect for what I do. Nothing says financial stability like Dad running an illegal book out of the den to fund a restaurant that exists entirely in his imagination. And it's not casual money either. This is the family's whole future stuffed into envelopes, riding on whether grown men in another city catch a ball. The Solitano household has bet everything it has on the Philadelphia Eagles, and nobody in it finds that alarming. Then comes the part Pat won't accept. His father tells him straight, Nikki sold the house, she left, she's gone. Pat hears this and simply declines to believe it, because in Pat's version they are very, very much in love. The restraining order is a misunderstanding, and the universe is about to course correct in his favor. This is where he debuts his whole operating system, Excelsior. He's going to find the silver lining in everything, and that's no nonsense, that takes work, and that's the truth. It's a beautiful philosophy. It is also being deployed by a man planning to win back a woman legally required to stay 500 feet away from him. To become Nikki's dream man, Pat reads. He plows through Ernest Hemingway's A Farewell to Arms in one marathon sitting, stays up the whole night with it, races toward the ending fully expecting the love story to be rewarded, and instead discovers that the love of the protagonist's life does not make it. And Pat, who needs a happy ending the way other people need oxygen, absolutely cannot take it. At 4 in the morning, he hurls the entire book straight through his closed bedroom window. Glass shatters across the yard. His parents come stumbling out of bed, hearts pounding, certain something terrible has happened. And it has, sort of, it's just that the terrible thing is literature. Pat is genuinely, righteously outraged and not at himself, at Hemingway. She doesn't make it, Dad. Can't somebody, just once, decide to be positive and give the story a good ending? A grown man standing barefoot in broken glass at 4 a.m., shaking with fury at a long-gone novelist for failing to find the silver lining. He flatly refuses to apologize to his parents for the window. He does, however, magnanimously offer to apologize on behalf of Ernest Hemingway, which is a sentence no therapist could have predicted. It's hilarious, and then it isn't, because under the joke is a man who genuinely cannot survive a sad ending right now, which is the whole problem, because his own story doesn't look like it's heading for a happy one. So Pat trains obsessively. He runs the streets of Philadelphia in a black garbage bag worn over his hoodie to sweat off the weight, a beanie on his head, sprinting toward a reunion only he believes is coming. The garbage bag becomes his uniform, half boxer, half man taking out the trash, fully convinced this is the look that wins back a school teacher. He's also refusing his medication because the pills make him foggy and he doesn't want to need them. So here's the full picture of Pat's recovery plan: no meds, a trash bag, a reading list, and the unshakable certainty that a restraining order is just paperwork between two people in love. A man rebuilding his entire life on willpower and willpower alone. His therapist, Dr. Cliff Patel, has a different approach. Pat doesn't want to be in therapy at all. He's only there because the court says so, and he treats Patel like an obstacle between him and Nikki rather than a doctor. But Patel is sharper than Pat gives him credit for. In the waiting room, Stevie Wonder's My Sherry Amore comes drifting through the speakers, and that is not an accident. That song was playing the day Pat's life detonated, his wedding song, and Patel planted it on purpose in his own waiting room to see what would happen. What happens is Pat comes completely apart on his feet, tearing the office apart, trying to find the speaker and rip it out of the wall, the whole calm facade gone in 2 seconds flat. Patel, perfectly serene through the chaos, admits it. I wanted to see if it was still a trigger for you. Pat, chest heaving, surrounded by wreckage. Bravo, it's a trigger. It is the single most efficient therapy session in film history, and it tells Patel exactly how much work is ahead of him. And here's the thing that song triggers. Pat came home from work early one day, heard his wedding song playing in his own house, found a man's clothes that weren't his, and found Nikki in the shower with the history teacher from her school, Doug Culpepper. The teacher's only contribution was suggesting Pat should probably go. Pat did not go. Pat nearly put the man in the ground, and that is the violent episode that landed him in court-ordered care for 8 months. We also learn the diagnosis that explains the wiring. Pat is bipolar, mood swings, and unusual thinking set off by severe stress, undiagnosed for years until everything came apart at once. He's quick to draw a line between himself and his father, though. I am not the explosion guy. My father is the explosion guy, said by the man who just threw a book through a window. Speaking of the explosion guy, Pat SR has discovered something wonderful. The Eagles score the instant Pat sits down on the couch, so to a superstitious bookie that settles it, Pat is good luck. Not might be, is. The man has built an entire belief system around remotes facing the right way and a handkerchief held just so, and now he's got living, breathing proof in the form of his son. He drags Pat onto the sofa mid-game to help turn the juju around, clutching his green Eagles handkerchief like a holy relic, gripping his boy's hand, insisting Pat is meant to be here. Everything happens for a reason. That's why you came home, embrace it. And right on cue, the birds put points on the board and Pat SR's faith is confirmed forever. The superstition machine just found its lucky charm, and it is never, ever letting him go, a fact that's going to matter enormously when there's real money on the table. But Pat's got his own agenda, and it's a felony waiting to happen. He sneaks over to Nikki's school looking for her, corners a former colleague named Nancy with too many questions about where Nikki might be, and learns that Doug Culpepper, the history teacher, still works there, which Pat receives about as calmly as you'd expect. To Pat, this is reconnaissance. To everyone watching, it is a man with a restraining order loitering at the workplace of the woman he's barred from contacting, asking her coworkers for her schedule. The result of that field trip is Officer Keogh showing up at the Solitano house with a reminder. Respect the restraining order. 500 feet. The stakes just stopped being romantic and started being legal, and Officer Keogh is going to become a recurring character whether he wants to or not. Then a door opens. Pat reconnects with his old friend Ronnie, who invites him to Sunday dinner. Ronnie's wife is Veronica, who Pat is fairly sure despises him and who still keeps in touch with Nikki. Pat accepts instantly because to Pat this isn't dinner, it's intelligence gathering. Somebody at that table has a direct line to his ex-wife, and he intends to use it. Real quick, a couple of things worth knowing. Silver Linings Playbook came out in 2012, directed by David O. Russell, who wrote it partly out of his own family's experience with mental illness, which is why the movie treats Pat's bipolar disorder as something to live with, not laugh at. Jennifer Lawrence won the Best Actress Oscar for this at 22, the third youngest winner ever at the time. And the Philadelphia Eagles' obsession is not set dressing. Russell is a real fan. The football superstition runs straight through the plot, and you should keep your eye on it because it ends up tangled in everything. Okay. Back to dinner. First, a session with Patel, who reframes Pat's whole silver lining gospel right back at him and slips in a warning Pat is in no state to hear. True love, Patel says, is about letting her go and seeing if she comes back. Pat nods along like he agrees while clearly filing it under things other people believe. What he actually wants is a strategy, something to do when that song plays so he doesn't disassemble a room. Patel gives him breathing, focus, a positive image. Pat will get to test it sooner than he'd like. Then comes dinner at Ronnie and Veronica's, and Pat arrives dressed for war. The house is upscale and tasteful, and Veronica runs it like a museum where the exhibits are her own good taste. So naturally Pat shows up in his green Deshaun Jackson jersey, ready to talk Eagles with a host who would much rather talk about the renovation and the imported tile. Ronnie pulls his friend aside into the perfect, immaculate, brand new addition and quietly comes apart. Under the dream house and the new baby and the career, he confesses, he feels like he's slowly being crushed, suffocating under the weight of a life that's supposed to look enviable from the outside. He even takes Pat into the garage just to scream into the void for a second. It's a small moment and it's easy to miss, but it rhymes with the whole movie. Every single person at this lovely dinner is white-knuckling something heavy and smiling through it. Pat's just the only one who's smiling through it landed him in a facility. And then she walks in. Tiffany Maxwell, Veronica's younger sister, recently widowed. Her husband Tommy was a cop and he's gone. She arrives in head-to-toe black, eyeliner like war paint, daring anybody at this polite dinner to make her feel welcome. She sits down across from Pat, and the two of them clock each other on sight, not romantically, clinically, the way two people on the same difficult wavelength recognize one another in a room full of people who are fine. They're both running on a few too many feelings and a few too few filters, and within about 90 seconds they've skipped right past small talk and started trading their psychiatric prescriptions back and forth like kids comparing baseball cards. Lithium, Seroquel, Klonopin, Trazodone. He's been on that one, she's been on this one, that one made her foggy, this one made him gain weight. They compare side effects the way other couples compare favorite restaurants, and Veronica looks like she wants to slide under the table. It is the least romantic conversation at the dinner, and the most honest connection either of them has had in months. Pat, who has no filter whatsoever, looks at Tiffany and says, "You look nice," then immediately clarifies, "I'm not flirting," which is somehow ruder than flirting. Tiffany, who also has no filter, returns fire just as flat. Neither of them does small talk, neither of them does manners, and both of them are weirdly relieved to be sitting across from somebody who won't pretend everything's normal. Then, because he physically cannot help it, Pat asks how Tommy died. The table freezes. He asks again. Veronica is dying inside, the dinner party is detonating in slow motion, and Pat genuinely does not understand why a perfectly reasonable question is landing so badly. Tiffany has had enough of the audience, stands up and cuts straight through it. "Are you gonna walk me home or what?" Two damaged people, one exit, zero small talk. On the walk home, Tiffany makes Pat an offer that is extremely direct, laying out exactly what she's willing to do if he simply turns the lights off. No romance required, just two broken people and a light switch. Pat, to his enormous credit and her clear surprise, deflects, "I think you're pretty, but I'm married." Tiffany says, "So am I." Pat brightens, finally, common ground, two married people who understand each other. Then her face changes and she corrects herself. "No, that's confusing, he's gone." And just like that, the whole brittle armor cracks open and she's standing on the sidewalk crying, and Pat is frozen there, completely out of his depth, with absolutely no idea what to do with real grief that isn't his own private delusion. It's the first time in the movie he meets pain bigger than his own, and he has no script for it. His denial and her loss have officially been introduced, and from here on they are going to keep crashing into each other until one of them gives. That night the denial wins. At 3 in the morning, Pat jolts awake and decides he must find his wedding video right now, this instant, because the song is playing in his head and he needs to see Nikki's face to make it stop. He storms into his parents' room demanding to know where the tape is, then tears the house apart, drawer by drawer, closet by closet, room by room, a one-man search party at 3 a.m. for a video nobody can find. Dolores tries to calm him, gets too close to the chaos, and Pat swings an arm and accidentally knocks his own mother to the floor. That's the line. Pat SR comes flying in to defend his wife, grabs his son, and the whole thing collapses into a wrestling match on the living room carpet in the middle of the night, two grown men and a panicking household. The neighbors reasonably call the police and Officer Keogh is back. At this point, he could be billed as a member of the cast. And to gild the disaster, there's a documentary kid named Ricky who's been filming a school project on mental illness in the neighborhood, and he's recording every single second of it, capturing the Solitano family at its absolute worst for posterity. Pat, in the middle of the meltdown, has exactly one priority, and it isn't his mother or his father or the cops. It's this: you can't tell Nikki about this. Rock bottom, and he's still managing the optics of a marriage that legally no longer exists. Out on his runs, Tiffany starts appearing. She just falls into step behind him, uninvited, in her own running gear, matching his pace, refusing to be shaken loose. He speeds up, she speeds up. He tries to lose her, she stays right there. It's the world's least romantic courtship, two people in athletic wear sprinting through Philadelphia, neither admitting they're glad the other one showed up. She needles him the whole way. "Calm down, crazy." Pat insists he's married. She fires back, "So am I." He snaps, "Your husband's gone," and instead of flinching, she pushes straight into her own past, telling him plainly that she used to be reckless, that she's not anymore, and asking him a question that's really about both of them. Can you forgive people? Are you any good at that? Pat does not have an answer. He's never tried. He's spent the whole movie demanding forgiveness from Nikki, and has never once considered offering it to anybody else. Back in Patel's office, the doctor plants the idea that becomes the entire engine of the movie. Befriending Tiffany, Patel suggests, would make Pat look kind and generous and large-hearted, and since Tiffany is connected to Veronica, who's connected to Nikki, helping Tiffany helps Pat. Pat hears one word in that whole sentence: Nikki. Suddenly being nice to this woman isn't charity, it's strategy, and Pat loves a strategy. So Pat asks Tiffany to a diner and she immediately establishes the terms. It is not a date. This is non-negotiable, and she repeats it. To prove it isn't a date, Pat orders Raisin Bran at a diner. At dinner time, a bowl of bran cereal, the most defiantly unromantic order a human can place, and Tiffany counters with a cup of tea and nothing else, and the two of them sit in a booth aggressively performing how not together they are. It is a date. It is obviously a date. It is two people who would rather eat cereal in silence than admit they wanted to see each other. Over the not date, Pat admits the thing eating him, that he wishes he could explain himself to Nikki, the whole wedding video incident, in a letter, if he only had a way to get it to her. And Tiffany goes still, then says the magic words, "I can get a letter to Nikki. I see her sometimes with my sister." The whole machine just clicked into place. Suddenly Pat is looking at his courier, and Tiffany is looking at the one piece of leverage that might get this man to give her something back. Tiffany also opens up about her own crash after Tommy, how she lost her job, how she went looking for connection in all the wrong places at the office, 11 of them, and got fired for it. She says it flatly, daring him to judge, laying her worst chapter on the table to see if he'll flinch. So of course he judges. Pat fumbles it catastrophically, implying he's the saner one of the two of them, that Nikki would never want him lumped in with someone like her. It's a cruel thing to say to a woman who just handed him her worst secret, and Tiffany detonates. "I am so much crazier than you." She tears into him for daring to think he's the normal one in this booth, owns every bit of her own damage louder than he can deny his, and the fight rockets out of the diner and into the parking lot. Raised voices, bystanders, a near brawl, the whole night sky lighting up with two people screaming about who's more broken. Officer Keogh, who at this point should just sublet a room at the Solitano house, shows up again and walks Pat down off the ledge with a breathing exercise. "It's a song. Don't make it a monster. There's no song playing. Slowly it works." And here's the thing that matters. Tiffany, the woman Pat just publicly insulted, covers for him with the cop, smooths the whole thing over, takes the heat off him. And despite all of it, despite being told to her face that she's the embarrassing, crazy one, she still agrees to deliver his letter to Nikki. She is that starved to be useful to somebody, even somebody who just wounded her in a parking lot. Real quick, the chemistry you're watching is partly real history. Bradley Cooper and Jennifer Lawrence have made several films together off the back of this one, and that Dinerand running banter is most of why. Robert De Niro, playing Pat SR, reportedly got emotional filming the father-son scenes because the material hit close to home for him too. And the breathing exercise cop, the documentary kid, the whole nosy neighborhood, that texture of a tight working-class Philly block where everyone's in everyone's business is the movie's secret weapon. It makes the chaos feel like family. Okay, the deal is about to get strange. Pat finishes his letter, hands it over, and Tiffany, who has spent the whole movie giving to people and getting nothing, pumps the brakes. She's tired of being everyone's free service. "I do all this for other people," she says, "and then I wake up and I'm empty." So she names her price. She's entered a pairs dance competition at the Benjamin Franklin Hotel, and she needs a partner, and that partner is going to be Pat. Pat reacts like she suggested he eat a chair. "I'm not going to do a dance." But the terms are non-negotiable. She becomes his courier to Nikki, and in exchange, he becomes her dance partner. The entire rest of the movie is now a man learning to foxtrot in order to mail a letter. Pat tries to sell her on why this is all worth it, why Nikki is worth it. He describes their marriage as this unconventional, electric thing, unconventional chemistry. He calls it, "It's electric between us," insisting that he and Nikki bring out each other's best self, that apart they are each becoming the person the other always wanted. It's a genuinely romantic speech, delivered with total conviction, about a woman who has a restraining order against him. And Tiffany listens and nods along, and you can watch something shift in her face with every word, because she's getting more invested in him the longer he describes loving somebody else. That's the cruel comedy of it. She's not falling for the love story. She's falling for the guy telling it, the only man she's met who feels things as loudly and hopelessly as she does. Then Danny's back. Pat's friend from the facility somehow argues his own way out of Baltimore, this time legitimately, with a triumphant jailhouse lawyer monologue about the finer points of mental hygiene law that he is extremely proud of, and turns up at Tiffany's dance studio like he was on the schedule. He takes one look at Pat's rigid, terrified, counting the steps out loud attempt at dancing, and immediately diagnoses the problem as a total absence of soul. He starts coaching Pat to loosen up, to feel it, to stop dancing like a man defusing a bomb, and the studio relaxes for the first time. The three of them start to click: the grieving widow, the bipolar man in a trash bag, and the guy who keeps breaking out of a mental facility, all choreographing a competition routine in a garage. It should not work. It is the least qualified dance team in Pennsylvania. And somehow, beat by beat, it starts to look like something. The studio itself tells you everything about her. It's a converted garage Tiffany built with Tommy's insurance money, hard oak floors she's proud of, good bounce for dancers, a whole private little world she constructed out of the money her grief left behind. She turned a payout for the worst thing that ever happened to her into the one place she feels like herself. Rehearsals start rough. Tiffany makes Pat walk toward her across the floor like she's Nikki, trying to trick a real feeling out of him by pointing it at the woman he actually loves. Do you feel that? That's emotion. Pat flat is aboard, I don't feel anything. And there's the irony he can't see yet. He's straining to manufacture love for one woman while a completely different woman, standing right in front of him, patiently teaches him what the real thing even feels like. The lesson's landing. He's just got the names backwards. To teach him what feeling really costs, Tiffany finally tells him how Tommy died, and the whole movie goes quiet. She'd gone cold on her husband, distant, pulled away from him the way couples do when they stop trying. And one night, Tommy, trying to fix it, drove all the way out to the King of Prussia Mall, to the Victoria's Secret, to buy something that might get a spark going between them again. He was doing the hopeful, slightly clumsy thing a husband does when he still wants to save it. On the drive home, he stopped on I-76 to help a stranger change a flat tire, because that was the kind of man he was, and a passing car hit him, and that was the end of everything. The box from the store was still sitting in the front seat when they found his car. She tells the whole thing without crying, every detail flat and exact, then looks at Pat. He doesn't say anything. There's nothing to say, and she says quietly, that's a feeling. It's the emotional center of the whole movie, and it lands because she's not asking for sympathy. She's showing him the bill that comes due when you go cold on someone while you still have time to love them. It's the closest thing to a warning anybody gives Pat all movie, and he's too stuck on Nikki to hear it yet. And then football crashes the party. Dolores arrives at the studio carrying Eagles betting information because Pat, SR, expects to spend his sacred game time with his Lucky Charm, and the two worlds the movie has carefully kept in separate rooms finally collide. Tiffany's reaction is instant and fiercely territorial. She physically throws the football material out the door of her studio. Football stays out of this place. So does Lord of the Flies, Nikki's reading list, banished right alongside the Eagles. To Tiffany, this garage is the one square of ground in the entire movie that belongs to her and Pat and nobody else. No juju, no betting slips, no ex-wife syllabus, no ghosts. It's sacred for completely different reasons than her father-in-law's living room, and she will guard it with her life. The trouble is, those two worlds are about to be welded together by a bet, and her clean little studio is going to be ground zero. Meanwhile, back home, Pat SR does something rare and difficult. He comes and sits on the edge of Pat's bed and apologizes, really apologizes, the kind that costs a proud man something for being a distant father. He admits he spent too much time with Pat's brother Jake growing up and not nearly enough with Pat, that he never knew how to handle his son's intensity. So for years he mostly just kept his distance and let it slide. And then he says the thing underneath all the superstition, the Eagles ritual, the dragging Pat onto the couch, the lucky handkerchief, the juju, all of it, it was never really about the football. It was an excuse to sit next to his son. It's a genuinely moving reconciliation between a father and a son who never figured out how to talk to each other without a game on, two men finally saying the thing out loud. There is, of course, a catch, because there's always a catch with this family, and the catch is wearing Eagles green. The catch is the bet. Pat SR reveals he is putting everything on the line, the entire restaurant savings, on the Eagles against the Giants, because he believes in Pat. He wants Pat at the Giants game with brother Jake, sitting there as the good luck charm that wins him a fortune. Randy thinks it's a foolish bet. Pat thinks he has a dance rehearsal and turns his father down, refusing to explain the details. It's a dance thing. There's nothing more to it, because admitting he'd rather practice a routine with Tiffany than be his dad's lucky talisman would not go over well. He's now double booked between his father's superstition and Tiffany's competition, and both of them think they're his priority. Then Tiffany delivers the goods, a reply from Nikki, an actual letter, the thing Pat has been praying for. Except Tiffany holds it hostage, dangling it just out of reach, refusing to hand it over until Pat finally lands the hardest lift in their routine. It's pure motivation. She's turned his deepest desire into a dance incentive. He nails the move, she gives him the letter, and he reads it aloud with his whole heart in his throat. Nikki writes that she's keeping the restraining order in place until she feels safe, that she's genuinely glad to hear he's becoming a more loving and caring man, but that she needs to see something, some proof, that he's truly ready to resume their marriage. And if he can't show her that, then maybe, the letter says, they'd both be better off moving on separately. Pat is gutted and electrified at the same time because buried in the rejection is an opening. Prove yourself and there's a door. But buried in the letter is something else, something Pat sails right past. A phrase that doesn't sound like a school teacher at all, a line about reading the signs that sounds precisely like the way Tiffany talks. Hold on to that line. It's the whole movie. Pat doesn't notice it for a second because he's already decided what the proof will be, the dance. He'll show Nikki his transformation by performing a competition routine, and she'll see the new man and lift the order and take him back. A flawless plan, assuming nothing about it goes wrong, which is a generous assumption for this guy. Real quick, the dance and the bet are about to fuse into one impossible knot, so here's the lay of the land. The choreography you'll see is deliberately amateur and a little ridiculous, which was the point. These are two unwell people who learn to dance in a garage, not professionals. The Benjamin Franklin Hotel, where it all goes down, is a real Philadelphia landmark. And every superstition Pat SR has been building all movie, the lucky charm, the juju, the handkerchief, is about to get weaponized into a single bet that decides whether this family keeps its house. Okay. Here's where it all collides. The family pressure wins and Pat caves. Against his promise to Tiffany, he goes to the Eagles-Giants game with his brother Jake and Jake's loud, beer-soaked friends, figuring he can split his time, be the lucky charm for a few hours, make rehearsal later. The crowd does not make it easy. People recognize him, needle him about the loony bin, and the whole afternoon has a hum of menace under the tailgate cheer. Outside the stadium, he even runs into Dr. Patel, who has traded his calm office sweater for full green Eagles face paint, and announces that today he is not Pat's therapist, he's his brother in green. Everybody in Philadelphia answers to the birds. Then it all goes sideways fast. Jake's friends start harassing a group of Indian fans in the parking lot, telling them to go back to their country, and the ugliness tips straight into a brawl. And here's the gut punch detail. One of the men they're targeting is standing right next to Patel, Pat's own therapist, who came out in good faith in his face paint to enjoy a game. Pat sees his brother and his doctor in the middle of it and dives in to protect them both, get off my brother, and gets swallowed whole by the melee, fists and bodies everywhere. Stadium security hauls him out. He's detained, the afternoon is in ruins, and to top it off, the Eagles lose to the Giants. So in a single trip, Pat manages to break his promise to Tiffany, miss the rehearsal he swore he'd make, blow his sacred good luck charm duty, get his therapist caught in a fight, and get personally dragged out of an NFL stadium. It is a flawless afternoon, assuming the goal was to disappoint every single person in his life at the exact same time. And the bet is gone. The Birds lose to the Giants, and Pat SR loses the entire restaurant fund, the dream, the savings, everything to Randy on a single game. The warm, reconciled, sitting on the bed father from a few scenes ago evaporates in an instant, and the bookie turns on his own son. You loser. He throws Deshaun Jackson right back in Pat's face, spiked the ball at the 1-yard line, snatched defeat from victory, and pins the whole catastrophe on Pat for breaking the juju, for running off to dance with Tiffany instead of holding up his sacred end as the family's lucky charm. The exact superstition that made Pat special and chosen and necessary an hour ago has flipped, and now it makes him the scapegoat for the worst financial day of his father's life. That's the cruel arithmetic of being a good luck charm. The day the team wins, you're a miracle. The day the team loses, the loss is entirely your fault. And then Tiffany comes through the door swinging, and the movie hands her the single best scene in it. She storms into the Solitano living room, furious that Pat no-showed the rehearsal she's been counting on, but instead of crying or pleading, she turns to the wall of superstitious gamblers and beats them at their own religion. She has done the homework. She has the receipts. She rattles off every single Eagles and Phillies win that landed on a day she happened to be spending time with Pat. The Eagles over the 49ers, 40-26. The Phillies over the Dodgers, 7-5. The Eagles over the Falcons, 27-14. The Phillies over Tampa Bay, 10-2. The Eagles over the Seahawks, 14-7. Date after date, win after win, all of them on days she and Pat were together. Her argument, delivered to a room of stunned bookies, is airtight and uses their own logic against them. Pat isn't bad luck. Pat is bad luck at the stadium and good luck with her. Every time the family shipped him off to a game without her, disaster. Every time he was at the studio in her orbit, Philadelphia won. And then she lands the finishing blow because she knows exactly who she's talking to. The state motto of New York, she informs them, is Excelsior, Pat's own personal mantra, the word he's been chanting since the day he got home. Look it up. Pat SR, a man who has organized his entire emotional and financial life around omens, hears a beautiful young woman recite win-loss records like Holy Scripture and connect his son's magic word to a state motto, and he is instantly, totally, religiously converted. I gotta rethink this whole thing. He thought she was trouble an hour ago. Now he'd follow her into battle. The superstition logic has just been flipped live in real time to make the dance the lucky thing, and that flip is about to cost or save him everything. And out of that flip, the parlay is born, the bet that fuses the two halves of the entire movie. To win his money back, Pat SR challenges Randy to double or nothing on the next game, the Eagles against Randy's Cowboys, on December 28th. Randy, smelling weakness, piles it on and then proposes the cruel part, a parlay. Two conditions both must hit or Pat SR loses everything. Condition 1, the Eagles have to beat the Cowboys. Condition 2, and this is where the air leaves the room, Pat and Tiffany have to score at least a 5-0 at their dance competition. The same December 28th. Win both, win it all back and then some. Miss either one, lose the house. And Tiffany, riding her own adrenaline, blurts out that they can absolutely get a 5-0, no problem, committing them both to a number neither of them has ever come close to hitting. The Eagles game and the garage dance routine are now legally, financially, and superstitiously welded into a single bet. Pat's reaction to being made half of his father's life savings wager is to quit. He's overwhelmed, he's done, he's out, I'm not doing the dance. He reaches naturally for football to explain his own collapse, comparing himself to Deshaun Jackson snatching defeat from the jaws of victory, fumbling the one good thing right at the goal line. Tiffany, disgusted, tells him he's not a stand-up guy and walks. The deal is off, the bet is impossible, the partnership is over, and Pat SR is one game away from losing everything he owns. So the parents do the only thing desperate parents can do, they lie. With the house on the line and Pat refusing to dance, they cook up a scheme to get him back to that competition by dangling the one thing guaranteed to move him, that Nikki will be there, watching. Pat SR frames it nobly as leaving a trail of breadcrumbs so his son can live his life without wrecking it, a father gently steering his kid toward the good ending he can't see. Dolores hates it, hates lying to her boy's face about the one subject he can't think straight about, but she reluctantly goes along because she's convinced it's for the best. So the thing that finally drags Pat back to the dance floor, the thing that saves the parlay, the restaurant, the house, and though nobody knows it yet, his entire future with Tiffany, is a flat-out lie about the woman he's been chasing the whole movie being in the room. A lie. Hold on to that one too, because in about 10 minutes it's going to come true in the worst, most inconvenient way imaginable. Real quick, the parlay is one of the great structural tricks in any romantic comedy, because it ties the head and the heart together with money. Pat SR's whole arc lives in that bet. He's no longer just a superstitious bookie, he's a father putting his life savings on his son's happiness and calling it a wager because that's the only language he speaks. The screenplay won Russell an Oscar nomination, and this fusion of the football bet and the dance score is exactly why two completely different movies, the sports superstition comedy and the wounded people love story, get locked into one outcome you cannot split. Okay, December 28th. Everything at once. The morning of the competition, Pat shows up late to one last desperate rehearsal, and both of them are a mess. They've barely got the routine, the lift is shaky, the bet is impossible, and Pat keeps repeating the one thing keeping him upright: Nikki's gonna be there. He believes the lie completely. It's the only reason he's dancing at all, not for the bet, not for Tiffany, but for the woman he's been promised will be watching. Tiffany hears him say it over and over and just absorbs it, because what is she going to say? They pull themselves together and head to the Benjamin Franklin Hotel. They walk in and immediately understand they are in serious trouble. The ballroom is full of professional pairs in matching costumes doing actual competitive ballroom dancing, lifts and spins, and the whole business. Pat looks around and asks more or less, is this Dancing with the Stars? Their homemade garage routine is about to go up against people who do this for a living. Randy is in the crowd, gloating, already counting Pat SR's money. Jake is sweating the bet. And the one thing keeping any of it survivable is the number. They don't have to win. They don't have to place. They just need a 5-0. A single mediocre passing grade. That's the whole bet. Score average save the house. And then the lie comes true. Nikki actually walks in. Veronica and Ronnie engineered it, bringing her along in the hope that watching Pat shine would convince her to lift the restraining order. They thought they were helping. Tiffany spots her across the ballroom and the floor drops out from under her. What, Nikki? Oh no. The fake promise the parents invented to lure Pat back has accidentally materialized into a real woman standing in the real room, and Tiffany understands instantly what it means. The whole reason Pat is here is now physically present, and Tiffany is just the partner he needed to get to her. Everything she's built is about to evaporate because a desperate lie told the truth. Tiffany does what wounded people do. She starts to come apart. She heads to the bar, orders vodka, then another, and starts flirting hard with some smooth litigator type, putting on a show, trying to feel anything other than what she's feeling. Pat finds her there, sees the drinks, sees the man, and asks how many she's had. 2 vodkas, she says. And then she says the thing she's been holding back all movie. She used to think he was the best thing that ever happened to her, and now she thinks he might be the worst, and she's sorry she ever met him. It's the most honest she's ever been with him, and it's all pain. Pat looks at her, at this person who taught him to dance and carried his letter and listened to him describe another woman for weeks, and he doesn't argue and he doesn't explain. He just puts out his hand and says, come on, let's dance. Whatever else is true, they made a promise to a dance floor and they're going to keep it. So they take the floor and the movie cracks both climaxes open at the same time. Across the city, the Eagles are beating the Cowboys and the score is not close. Philadelphia is dismantling Dallas on their way to the playoffs, the final coming in at a brutal 44-6. Half the parlay just landed. Condition 1 is met. The Birds beat the Cowboys exactly like Pat SR swore they would. Now there is one number left in the entire universe that matters, and it belongs to 2 amateurs in homemade costumes about to dance for their family's house. And the routine is gloriously, perfectly ridiculous. It is not good ballroom. It is barely ballroom at all. It's a chaotic homemade mashup, a soft, romantic stretch of Stevie Wonder, then a violent hard left turn into the stomping fuzz of the White Stripes, then that campy final lift Pat has been dreading and avoiding for the entire movie, all stitched together by 2 unwell people who learned this in a garage and flatly refused to apologize for any of it. It is clumsy and earnest and joyful and completely, unmistakably theirs. The professional dancers and their coaches watch it the way you'd watch a dog walk across a room on its hind legs, half horror, half delight, total disbelief that it's happening at all. But they get through it. Pat doesn't bolt, Tiffany doesn't crumble, and when the lift comes they go for it, and they hit it, and they hold it, and they land it clean. Then they just stand there in the middle of the floor, chests heaving, 2 people who danced for a house and a future, waiting on the only grade that has ever mattered to either of them. The MC reads the scores, a 4-9. The crowd laughs because that is a wildly generous score for what just happened. A 4-8, another 4-9. That's a lot of 4s, the MC says. That's too bad, guys, because to a ballroom audience these are catastrophic numbers, last place numbers, the worst pairs in the room. The family's stomachs drop because they are not doing this for trophy, they need an average and the 4s are dragging it down. And then the last judge's score comes up, a 5-4. For an average of exactly 5-0, not 5-1, not 4-9. Exactly, precisely, miraculously the number on the bet. The Solitano family explodes, screaming, hugging, weeping with joy over a score that, to a room full of professional dancers, is a disgrace. One bewildered guest says it best, watching this family lose their minds. Why are they so excited about a 5? Because that 5 just won the parlay. The Eagles beat the Cowboys, Pat and Tiffany hit their number, both conditions met, and Pat SR didn't just win his money back, he won the restaurant. The juju held. But Pat doesn't stay in the celebration because the lie is standing across the room and he goes to her. He finally talks to Nikki face to face for the first time in the whole movie. And it is hollow. He thanks her for coming. He tells her she looks incredible, that she's lost weight. He runs down his progress like a man reciting a resume. He's been reading her books. He has a positive attitude now. He's on his medication. He's in therapy. He did everything the letter asked. He built himself into the exact man she said she wanted, fit, medicated, well-read, positive, and now he's standing right in front of her, presenting the finished product like a project that's finally due. And there's nothing there. No spark, no electricity, none of the unconventional chemistry he's been swearing about for weeks. The whole grand love he chased through a restraining order and a garbage bag and a stack of homework turns out to be a polite, weightless conversation between two strangers. He glances across the room and the only face in the world he actually wants to be looking at belongs to the woman who taught him to dance. And Tiffany, watching him walk straight to Nikki the very second the bet is won, can't bear another second of it. She turns and leaves. Pat SR catches his son before he can let her walk out the door, and the superstitious bookie finally says the truest thing in the whole movie. That girl loves you, he tells Pat plain and certain. He's honestly not sure Nikki ever did, and he sure as anything doesn't love him right now, and here's the beautiful thing. A man who's spent his entire life reading omens and remotes and handkerchiefs and box scores is now begging his son to read the most important sign he'll ever get. Life reaches out a moment like this, he says, and it's a sin if you don't reach back, so for once in your life, don't ruin it. And Pat, the son who spent the whole movie at war with this man over remotes and juju and a lost fortune and a fight on the carpet, just looks at his father and says, "I love you, Dad." And that's the moment the football superstition finishes growing up. All that nonsense about luck and charms and the right way to fold a handkerchief was, the whole time, a father who didn't have the words clumsily trying to teach his son how to grab the good thing standing right in front of him. He finally found the words, and Pat finally listened. So Pat runs after Tiffany and he hands her one more letter and he reads it to her out loud in the cold. "Dear Tiffany, I know you wrote the letter." And there it is, the reveal the whole movie has been quietly setting up. The reply from Nikki was never from Nikki. Tiffany forged it. That strange little phrase about reading the signs, the one that never sounded like a school teacher, was the tell because it was pure Tiffany. She wrote Nikki's rejection herself and slipped it to Pat. The only way you could meet my crazy, Pat tells her, was by doing something crazy yourself. And then he says the thing he's been unable to say for 2 hours of screen time. "I love you. I knew it the minute I met you. I'm sorry it took so long for me to catch up. I just got stuck." He didn't fall for Tiffany at the end. He fell for her at the beginning at that dinner over the prescription baseball cards. He just got stuck on a ghost and needed a whole competition and a forged letter and a parlay to catch up to what he already felt. And Tiffany comes clean. She wrote that letter a week ago. She was trying to be romantic in her own backwards way, letting him stay deluded about Nikki, giving him the closure of being rejected so he could finally let go and turn around and see her. It was the most generous lie she could think of, and it worked. They stand there in the cold, two people who traded their entire psychiatric histories at a dinner party, and she asks, "You love me?" "Yeah," he says, "I do." "Okay," she says. And they kiss. No swelling speech, no fireworks, just okay and a kiss, which from these two is practically a sonnet. The movie settles into its final Sunday, and everything that was delusion in the cold open is now real. The whole family is together, Pat and Tiffany, Pat SR, and Dolores, Jake, Ronnie, Randy, all of them on a Sunday, football on the TV, food coming out of the kitchen. Dolores makes braciole. Pat SR puts the jersey on. The restaurant is actually happening now, funded by the parlay payout that Randy had to hand back. And Pat SR, a man who learned exactly nothing about the dangers of gambling from nearly losing his entire life savings, is already cheerfully cooking up the next bet, something about needing the Birds to beat the Vikings by 3. Some people change. Some people just win once and double down forever, handkerchief in hand. But the household has its lucky charm back, the restaurant is finally real, and the juju, against all odds, held. Pat and Tiffany sit out on the porch in the cold, calm, together. Two unwell people who somehow found the one other person on Earth who could actually keep up with them. And Pat says the last thing in voiceover, and it lands the whole movie. The world will break your heart 10 ways to Sunday, that's guaranteed. But guess what? Sunday is his favorite day again. He thinks about everything everyone did for him. The mother who signed him out early against the doctors, the father who bet the house on him because he couldn't say it any other way, the therapist who planted a song to save him, the friend who broke out of a facility to teach him soul, and the woman who forged a letter just to keep him close long enough to catch up. He looks at all of it and feels like a very lucky guy. The movie ends exactly where that lonely, cold open monologue began. A Sunday, a family, the Eagles on the TV, except this time there's nobody missing from the room and nobody he has to invent. The reconciliation he was rehearsing for an empty room finally has someone sitting in it. It's all really there. If you made it to the silver lining, do the man a favor and subscribe and drop a comment telling us what we should recap next.